Section 1. Operation of the Model 310. The Model 310 is designed to form, fill, and seal 3 to 10-pound bags of ice at a rate of up to 40 bags per minute. It's important that you know how your machine operates. The 310 is controlled by a programmable controller. The controller unit is permanently programmed at the factory. The operating program is retained in the memory chip shown here. The controller takes inputs from various sensors located on the machine. The information it receives allows it to output signals that instruct the machine on which step to perform next. We can observe these inputs and outputs by watching the red lights on the controller. When you activate the start button, the signal inputs at light number 0, and the controller outputs at lights number 0 and 5. This signals the motor starters to pull in, which starts the motors on your machine. Once the motors start, the volumetric drum begins rotating. As long as the drum continues to rotate, your machine will continue to cycle. Each time the drum dumps product, a cam contacts a limit switch. At each contact, an input is made at light number 4. The controller will use this information to start an electric clutch which advances the film. The film will advance until the photo eye reads a timing mark located near the top of the film. When a timing mark is read, the controller will tell the clutch to stop advancing film. The controller will then activate the solenoid valve, causing the heat seal bar and perforator knife to cycle, cutting and sealing the film, forming the bags. The newly formed bag then proceeds along the machine to the filling station. After being filled, the bags pass into the tear-off belts and then into the tire. The bag then trips a limit switch, and the controller sends instructions to seal the bag. The entire cycle is repeated continuously unless interrupted. Section 2. Troubleshooting. Warning: read and become familiar with the instruction manual before attempting adjustments on the 310. High voltage is present. Use caution. Be sure to follow OSHA lockout-tagout procedures whenever required. We will now examine and explain operational problems you may encounter while operating the Model 310. The videotape is divided into sections that deal with specific problems and solutions. Put your VCR in shuttle or search mode to forward to the section you want to watch. An index of the videotape content is located on the video cassette case. Opening the control box door of the 310 automatically turns the power off. In some of the troubleshooting to follow, it will be necessary to have the power on while the control box door is open. To turn on power, use a regular screwdriver as shown. Section 3. Machine won't jog film. First, make sure the emergency stop button is pulled out. To jog film, your machine must be in manual or hand operation mode. Input light number 8 receives signals from the selector switch. In manual mode, input light number 8 must be on. If light number 8 fails to light, check for problems with the switch. Next, check to see that both stop buttons are pulled out. This will cause input light number 1 to light. If input light number 1 is not lit, check the stop buttons for problems. Make sure the film feed motor is running. This can be done by placing your hand on the motor to feel air blowing past the motor. If the motor is not running, check to see if output light number 0 is lit. If light number 0 is lit, check that the M2 motor starter is pulled in. If the motor starter is not pulled in, push the reset button as shown. It may be necessary to allow the overload mechanism to cool for a few minutes before it will reset. If the motor starter still does not pull in, the next thing to check is fuse number 14, located between wires number 60 and number 100. If the motor starter is pulled in, but the motor does not run, check that you have 220-volt power to the motor starter. This can be done by connecting a meter across input wires 1L1 and 1L2 at the M2 motor starter. If you have 220 volts at wires 1L1 and 1L2, check for 220 volts at output wires number 24 and 26. If you have power going into the motor starter but not out, replace the motor starter. If there is power coming out of the starter at wires number 24 and 26 but the motor fails to run, check for power going through the motor overload at wires number 25 and 26. You should find 220 volts. If you don't find 220 volts, first turn off the power. Next, remove the overload unit and check the heater in the overload. Replace it if there is no power at wires number 25 and 26. If you do find 220 volts at wires number 25 and 26 but the motor doesn't run, check for 220 volts at the motor junction box. If there is no power, check for problems in wiring to the motor. If power is present, this indicates the motor is faulty and must be replaced. If the film feed motor is running, push the jog button and check that input light number 6 and output light number 2 go on when the button is pushed. If light number 6 does not light, this indicates a problem with one of the jog buttons or wiring to the switch. If number 6 lights but number 2 does not light, check that input light number 5 is lit. If input light number 5 is not lit, this indicates that the heat seal limit switch is not activated. First, check that the heat seal is swung into position. This should happen when the jog button is pushed while in manual mode or by pushing the start button while in automatic mode. Next, check that the machine has 80 psi air pressure and that the heat seal is retracted. If the heat seal is retracted and input light number 5 is still not lit, it may be necessary to adjust the lever arm on the switch so the retracting heat seal guide bar activates the switch. If the switch is activated and input light number 5 is still not lit, this indicates a problem with the switch itself or wiring to the switch. If input light number 5 is lit and input light number 6 lights when the jog button is pushed, but output light number 2 does not light, there may be a malfunction in the controller. If output light number 2 lights when the jog button is pushed but the film does not advance, check that relay CR1 activates when output light number 2 lights. If the relay does not activate, check the 1 amp fuse number 16 between wires number 63 and number 102. If the fuse is good, check for power between wires number 45 and 63 on the relay block. If 110 volts is present and the relay does not activate, replace the relay. If the relay activates properly and the film does not advance, check the DC power supply. First, turn off the power. Then remove fuse number 12 and check for continuity. If the fuse is good, check that there is 110 volts AC between wires number 45 and number 46 at the power supply socket. If there is 110 volts going into the DC power supply, check that the unit is putting out approximately 90 volts DC at wires 48 and 70 when the relay is not activated. If 90 volts DC is not present, replace the power supply. If there is approximately 90 volts DC between wires number 48 and number 70, push the jog button. Output light number 2 should light. The relay should activate, and there should be about 90 volts DC between wires number 49 and 70. If 90 volts DC is not present, this indicates the relay contacts are faulty. Replace the relay. You should now have about 90 volts DC between wires number 49 and number 70 when the jog button is pushed. If 90 volts DC is present between number 49 and 70 but the machine still won't jog film, there may be a problem with the clutch coil. Check the resistance of the clutch coil and brake coil by first turning off the power for the machine. Then remove the DC power supply and relay CR1. Measure the resistance across wires number 49 and 70 and between wires number 48 and 70. The readings should be between 400 and 700 ohms. If the readings are incorrect, replace the clutch brake unit. Also check continuity between wire number 70 and the machine ground. If continuity exists, the clutch coil has been shorted to ground. Replace the clutch brake unit. If the above procedures have been followed and the machine does not advance film, check for mechanical problems in the clutch brake unit, the gearbox, and the chain drive. Section 4. Drum will not rotate in automatic mode. First, push the start button and check that input light number 0 lights. If input light number 0 does not light, this indicates there is a problem at the start button. Next, check that the auto manual switch is in the automatic position and that input light number 8 is off. If input light number 8 remains lit, this indicates a faulty switch. Next, check that the Model 125 bag tire is turned on. If the 125 is on, check and see if input light number 9 is lit. If light number 9 is not lit, replace control relay number 3. If the 125 is on and the drum will not start rotating, have someone observe the drum motor to see if it's starting when the start button is pushed. If the motor starts but immediately shuts down and the drum does not rotate, this indicates a mechanical problem with the belt, gearbox, or chain drive. Locate the mechanical problem and repair or replace as necessary. Check output light number 5. If number 5 is not lit, check to see that the stop buttons are out. If the stop buttons are out and output number 5 is still not lit, there may be a problem in the controller. If output number 5 is lit but the drum does not rotate, check that the M1 motor starter is pulled in. If the motor starter is not pulled in, push the reset button as shown. It may be necessary to allow the overload mechanism to cool for a few minutes before it will reset. If the motor starter still does not pull in, check the 1 amp fuse number 19 located between wires number 105 and 65. If the motor starter is pulled in, but the drum does not rotate, check that you have 220 volt power to the M1 motor starter between wires 1L1 and 1L2. If you have power at wire number 1L1 and 1L2, check for power at output wires number 21 and 23. If you have power going into the unit but not out, replace the motor starter. If there is power coming out of the starter at wires number 21 and 23, check to see if there is 220 volts at wires number 22 and 23. If not, turn off the power and check the heater in the overload. Replace it if necessary. If the motor still fails to run, there is a problem at the motor. Check for voltage at the motor junction box. If there is no power, check for problems in wiring to the motor. If power is present, this indicates the motor is faulty and must be replaced. Section 5. Drum starts to rotate but stops after 1 cycle. Check input light number 3. If input light number 3 is lit, this indicates the Model 125 limit switch is caught in the activated position. Make sure the 125 limit switch arm moves freely. If the arm moves freely and input light number 3 remains lit, replace the limit switch. During proper operation, input light number 3 should only flash momentarily when a bag passes through the Model 125 bag tire. Another cause of this problem can be low product level in the hopper. During proper operation, input light number 7 should be lit when the hopper is full. If product level is sufficient to cover the low-level detector and input light number 7 does not light, check the indicator light on the low-level detector. If the indicator light is not on while the detector is covered by product, increase sensitivity of the detector by removing its cover and adjusting the screw clockwise until the indicator light is lit. Input light number 7 should be lit when the detector indicator light is lit. Use caution in adjusting the sensitivity of the low-level detector. If sensitivity is too high, the drum may continue rotating and the machine will continue operating when the hopper is empty. Another cause may be a faulty micro switch located on the top of the filler drum. Check input light number 4. During proper operation, input light number 4 will light when the cam contacts the micro switch, and it will go off when the cam moves off the switch. Have someone activate the switch while you observe input light number 4. If the light does not light, this indicates a faulty switch. Section 6. Deformed bags. If bags are not forming properly, check to see that the static illuminator brushes are in good condition. They should not be worn or misshapen. The brushes should contact the film as it passes between them. Replace the brushes if necessary. Another cause of deformed bags can be plastic buildup. Make sure the film path in the heat seal area is free from plastic buildup. Pay particular attention to the Teflon cloth and the hot knife shield area. A helpful item to use is Slip-A-Cone part number 3948. This product will make all shields in the heat seal area very slippery, allowing the film to glide easily through the hot knife area. See Section 11, Heat Seal Repair and Adjustment, for information on replacing the Teflon cloth and other repairs. Section 7, Film Feed Problems. If the film advances through the belts but does not feed properly around the fill opening, check that the film is lubricated properly. Check to see if there is water in the ice pan, and be sure the felt wick is located between film layers. Make sure the felt wick is not overly compacted. Observe the rate water is being used. The felt wick should use a pan of water in 4 hours. To increase wicking action, puncture the felt as shown. If perforations are tearing or separating as the film passes through the machine, the film will not feed properly around the fill opening. The film may double back, or it may feed around only one side of the opening. This may indicate the perforator knife is cutting too deeply. Refer to Section 18, Perforator Adjustments, and adjust accordingly. These problems may also be caused by improper feed belt tension. See Section 14, Film Feed Belt Adjustments. Section 8. Film advances but photo eye does not stop film in proper position. If the film stops too soon, causing the heat seal to cut and seal in the wrong spot on the bag, this indicates the photo eye needs to be adjusted. Turn the control knob clockwise 1/2 turn. If the problem continues, adjust the control knob by half-turn increments clockwise. Caution: if the control knob is adjusted clockwise too much, eye marks will pass through the photo eye undetected, and the machine will shut down. For further information on the photo eye, see Section 17, Photo Eye Adjustments. Section 9, Machine Shuts Itself Down. If the machine shuts down and the red light on the control box is on, this indicates the hopper does not have product, or the proximity detector needs sensitivity adjustment. If the machine shuts down and the red light on the box is not on, check input light number 3. If input light number 3 is on, this indicates that the Model 125 limit switch is caught in the activated position. See Section 5 for further information. A shutdown can also be caused by a bag being momentarily hung up in the tire, which may result in two bags being stapled together. Check for proper positioning of the conveyor. Here it is extended too far. The end of the conveyor should be positioned directly below the tire so the bags drop freely. It's also important to keep tension of the Model 125 feed belt properly adjusted. The machine may also shut down if the photo eye does not read timing marks at the proper time. Check that the film has good dark timing marks printed on it. Also, make sure the photo eye is mounted on the same side of the film that the timing marks are printed on. When the photo eye is repositioned to the other side of the film, it's important to reposition the film guide so it's on the side of the eye where the film is entering. It's important that the film is threaded properly. Check that timing marks are passing through the photo eye. If the marks are above or below the photo eye, adjust the height of the photo eye bracket as necessary. The machine will shut itself down if a timing mark passes through the photo eye undetected. If this occurs, the timing mark will usually be several inches past the photo eye when the machine shuts down. Adjust the control knob in 1/2 turn increments counterclockwise to correct the situation. Caution: if the control knob is turned counterclockwise too much, the eye may read wrinkles and shadows, causing the film to be cut and sealed in the wrong position. For further information on sensitivity settings, see section number 17, Photo Eye Adjustments. Section 10. Machine shuts down at random. If the machine shuts down before a timing mark reaches the photo eye and no heat seal is produced, this indicates that film is not advancing far enough in the programmed time interval. There are a number of possible causes, including bags per minute rate is too high, the hot knife is activating too slowly, friction problems, bag rate. First, check that the machine is not operating at over 40 bags per minute. This can be determined by observing the counter for 1 minute. The bag per minute rate is set by adjusting the pulley, shown here. For clarity, we have removed the protective guard that normally covers this area. To adjust the pulley, it is necessary to loosen the drive belt by loosening the motor mounting bolts. Next, loosen the set screw on the adjustable pulley. To decrease bags per minute rate, turn the outer half of the pulley clockwise. It's important that the pulley is turned in half-turn increments, so the set screw is reseated on the flat area of the pulley. 1 revolution of the pulley will affect bag rate by 1 to 2 bags per minute. After adjusting the pulley, retension the drive belt and tighten the motor mount bolts. Then reinstall the guard before operating the machine. Heat seal or hot knife speed. Next, check that the heat seal is operating at the proper index speed. The film cannot start to advance until the hot knife is fully retracted. Adjust heat seal speed by adjusting these flow controls. Heat seal cylinder speed is controlled by restricting cylinder exhaust. Adjusting the flow control from valve port B counterclockwise will increase the speed that the hot knife extends. Adjusting the flow control from valve port A counterclockwise will increase the speed that the hot knife retracts. The proper rate for the hot knife is just below the point where it's making excessive noise. Friction. Machine shutdown can also be caused by friction problems in the feed belt system. First, check that film is properly lubricated. For further information on proper film lubrication, see Section 7. If the machine shuts down and the dancer arm is pulled in against the machine frame, or the film is broken between the roll of film and the feed belt, this indicates that the film is not being supplied freely from the roll. Make sure the film roll spins easily when the micro switch is depressed by the cam on the dancer arm. During machine operation, the dancer arm should stop at a 90-degree angle to the machine frame. Adjust the angle by loosening the set screw and rotating the cam, as shown here. Also, check that the core holder is not excessively tight. Machine shutdown can also be caused by feed belts being adjusted too tightly. Refer to Section 14, Feed Belt Adjustments. Section 11, Heat Seal Repair and Adjustment. For clarity, we have removed the heat seal unit from the Model 310. The repairs and adjustments shown in this section can normally be accomplished while the heat sealed unit is attached to the Model 310. Caution: be sure power is turned off before attempting any of these repairs or adjustments. Replacing heat element. First, disconnect the heat element leads. Next, disconnect the thermocouple wire. Then, loosen and remove the 2 hex head bolts and remove the hot knife assembly from the heat sealer. Next, remove the shield springs and the hot knife shield. Remove the hot knife from the 1-inch seal bar by removing the 4 bolts holding the knife to the bar. Separate the knife from the bar. Next, remove the 10 Allen head bolts. Then separate the hot knife backup from the hot knife. Remove and replace the heat element. Bushing blocks. While you have the heat sealer open, it's a good idea to check the bushing blocks for proper mounting and wear. The upper block is a fixed block with a tapered ream and countersunk bolt holes. It must be mounted with the countersunk holes facing out. The lower block is slotted and must be free-floating. It can be mounted either side out, but must be able to float. Replacing Teflon cloth. The Teflon cloth is held in place with 2 half-inch knobs and 1 bolt and roller locking plate on the bottom of the seal pad. To replace the cloth, first remove the knobs. Next, remove the bolt on the roller locking plate. Every time the cloth is replaced, the seal pad rubber should also be replaced. Peel the old rubber off and glue new rubber on. When repositioning the Teflon cloth and rollers, it's important to position the roller locking plate correctly. The roller holes are offset as shown and must be positioned towards the hot knife. Replace the bolt and the knobs. To reassemble the hot knife unit, first reinstall the 10 Allen head bolts. Replace the hot knife spacers and reassemble the 1-inch seal bar and hot knife. Reinstall the 4 bolts that hold the knife to the bar. Then reassemble the hot knife shield and the springs. Reinstall the 2 hex head bolts. Next, reconnect the thermocouple wire, making sure the wire is clear of the spacer. Then reconnect the heat element leads. With uniform pressure at the top and bottom, check that the hot knife shield moves freely. If there is any binding, check alignment and position of the bushing blocks. The proper distance between the seal pad rubber and the hot knife should be approximately 2 1/4 inches. This distance can be adjusted by adjusting the jacking bolts shown here. When replacing the seal pad guards, it's important to mount the guards parallel and flush with each other and the Teflon cloth. Section 12. Heat seal problems. Hot knife is not heating to the set temperature. This problem can occur during 2 different situations. It's important to determine which situation is present. The hot knife is not heating and the controller is not calling for heat. The hot knife is not heating and the controller is calling for heat. Situation 1. When the controller is not reaching the set temperature and the red indicator light on the controller is off, This usually indicates a problem with the thermocouple wire. 3 flashing Fs, as shown here, indicates a broken thermocouple wire. Check the thermocouple wire for continuity by checking resistance across terminal number 1 and 2 on the temporary